All right, it is 10 o'clock. We're going to call this meeting to order, certify that we do have a quorum. All 5 members are present. Item number 2 is public comments. This is not part of the public hearing. This is just general public comments. I don't believe we had anybody sign up for that. So item number 3 is open a public hearing regarding the proposed creation of Emergency Services District to be known as Cooke County Emergency Services District Number 1. We do have what appears to be 15 people that have signed up. Each person will be allotted 5 minutes to speak. Hopefully I can be able to control this timer up there. Somebody let me know if something goes haywire on it. And just a little background, this is a public hearing on a petition that was received by Commissioners Court, I believe last month, by the requisite number of individuals. We had the 2 notices in the newspaper as required by statute, and that is why we are all here today. So with that being said, we'll start with just the top of this list. First one is Barbara Fox. And as soon as I can figure out how to start this thing, you'll have 5 minutes.
Can I go ahead?
You can go.
Thanks very much for allowing me to speak. A Texas constitutional amendment back in 1949 gave rural areas the ability to create rural fire protection districts. They were allowed to levy 3 cents per $100 property valuation. In the 1980s, with all the population growth in the rural areas, the state of Texas recognized the need for supporting volunteer fire departments and rural fire protection districts. Another constitutional amendment provided ESDs with a broader power and the ability to levy a tax rate up to 10 cents per 100 valuation. In 2003 and 2011, rural fire protection districts were converted into ESDs. So far, we have 94 counties have started more than 300 ESDs throughout the state of Texas. The documented success of these ESDs over the years demonstrates the viability of an ESD to be a reliable method of providing personnel, vehicles, equipment, and facilities. Like hundreds of VFDs across Texas and throughout the United States, Indian Creek Volunteer Fire Department cannot sustain its current level of operations without becoming an ESD very soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Just as a point of clarification, because I don't know if I made that point earlier, this is a public hearing on the creation of that ESD to allow it to go to an election. So we're not deciding whether to create it today or not. We're deciding whether to allow the election. Our number 2 speaker is Leslie Sweet.
Thank you, Judge. As the judge said, my name is Leslie Sweet. I've been a Cooke County resident for 20 years. I've had opportunity to need the services of volunteer healthcare and fire workers. It's my opinion that we should have volunteer firemen, and we should not ask them to have to go out and beg for money and to solicit money in order to do their jobs. We should support training and equipment for our safety, and for the safety of the volunteers. To send volunteers in harm's way without providing them with proper training and equipment and the money they need is irresponsible as our part of as a citizens of our district. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next up is Bill Turner.
Morning, gentlemen.
Morning.
This is definitely a 2 firsts for me. I've never spoken before the Commissioners Court, and I have never advocated for raising taxes. However, when I was thinking about this, I ran across my property tax statement, and I noticed there was a line on there for the Cooke County Central College. So in the past, the citizens of Cooke County have decided that the college was beneficial to our county. It was beneficial to me a long, long time ago. It helped me get through college in a allotted time. And I saw the Gainesville Hospital. Citizens of Gainesville thought this was needed. I appreciate the fact it's there. I haven't had to use it, but I'm glad it's there. And then I see there's roads and bridges, and I'm sure the legislature carved that out, and it makes it for a smoother, easier ride. Come into town, get a little milk and bread and beer. I'm talking to you today about the Indian Creek Volunteer Fire Department, which is close to my heart, both literally and figuratively. I had what the cardiologists called a cardiac episode. We called 911. They were there in 5 minutes, and they had all the EKGs and everything hooked up. And 10 minutes later, the ambulance came. Not a knock on them. They've got to come from Woodbine, go through the roads. But this is a first-class operation we got now. But we can't continue to support it with fish fries and raffles and whatever. I've had 2 heart attacks. When I was on the treadmill for one of them, it says 1 out of 3 heart attacks are fatal. So I've used up my jokers here. I'm going to need these folks to come and get me and hopefully get me to the hospital in time to save my life. I'm hoping you'll give us an opportunity to make that a reality. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Next is Sam Samuel.
I too would, excuse me, I too would like to thank you as commissioners for the time allowed to present to the comments that we have for you this morning. I currently serve as the Vice President of the Lake Kiowa Board of Directors. And in a recent board meeting, we acknowledged unanimously the support for the Indian Creek Volunteer Fire Department, their goal of allowing a vote by residents to consider establishing an emergency service district. I'd like to give a little background. In 1972, my wife and I had our residency in Oak Ridge North. It's a small city near Conroe, Texas. And after I retired, we moved to Lake Kiowa in 2007. So we've lived here for about 14 years. While a resident of Oak Ridge North, in 1974, the South Montgomery County Volunteer Fire Department was organized as a rural fire protection district staffed by volunteers. With monetary donations and the generosity of the area citizens and merchants, property was obtained for the first fire station. But over time, growth in the area served the department, and it had to grow. The department could no longer, though, rely solely on donations to support the department, even though the area around us was growing real good. In 1978, residents saw the need for a fire prevention district. An election was authorized, and the residents gave their approval for Montgomery County Rural Fire District number 8 to be formed. The income from property taxes rather than donations afforded for more capital expenditures to take place. A second station was later added in a subdivision near the Woodlands, which also down in the Conroe area. In 2009, the Emergency Service District number 8 was established for the fire department, and they were able to hire their first full-time fire chief. Today, and with the public continuing to support the financial increase of funding, the department is able to respond with 18 career firefighters, fire apparatuses, 5 of them in fact, and a battalion chief. Assistance is also received from surrounding departments which also support this service district. Today, Emergency Service District number 8 Response District serves a 53 square mile response district with an estimated service population of 87,000 people. I share all this information of my past experiences along with the history of the ESD number 8 to come here today asking that you Approval allowing the residents in the proposed emergency service district to cast their vote on either approving or disapproving the establishment of the service district, which we feel will benefit all of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. The next speaker is Randy Howe.
Thank y'all for allowing me to speak. I've been a property owner resident in Cooke County since 1996. I have multiple properties in Lake Kiowa, but I also have properties outside of Lake Kiowa. And I'm here to speak my opinion of things that I think everybody in the room, including y'all, are all aware of. Growth that we have seen since I've been here is getting greater and greater, and more need for more protection in all aspects. And in order to do that, we need assistance and help, a way to control it. So many of our people of Kiowa aren't full-time, they're part-time, so it goes by the wayside trying to get donations or help provide the funds to run the fire departments. So we're a little bit unlike that compared to other volunteer fire departments where it's surrounded by a nucleus of a community that lives there. The majority of the people that own the property live in that area. And I know that the property that I own outside of Kiowa is on 902. It's a small commercial tract, and as growth continues to grow and grow, I see the traffic flow is getting greater and greater, harder to get ingress and egress out of that property. And it's just a matter of time before it's going to be just like living in any normal community or city where we're going to have traffic lights and so forth, and we need more protection and a way to fund that protection. So I would hope that y'all will consider what we're saying. We're not saying anything that y'all aren't already aware of, I don't believe. And lastly, my biggest concern is burnout. The few people that dedicate their heart and soul to our volunteer fire department are going to reach burnout. And so many other people that live in our community are not of the caliber or the age or the drive to continue to do the same thing. So please consider what we're asking for. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker is, and I can't tell if that's an H or an N, Davis Noble.
Medical emergencies and fires can ruin lives in a matter of minutes. On June 16, 2018, I went to investigate a strange noise coming from my garage. Opening the door, I found it filled with dense black smoke and roaring flames. The batteries on my golf cart had exploded. I called 911, and 7 minutes later, the first of the trucks arrived on scene. Because of the quick response by the Indian Creek Fire Department, my house was saved. But will that always be the case? Volunteers burn out, equipment breaks down, repairs and replacements are expensive. Having to rely strictly on donations doesn't allow for the proper budgeting and long-term planning. It puts people's lives and property at risk. Allowing the Indian Creek Volunteer Fire Department the opportunity to become an emergency service district will help stabilize its financial future, thus helping not only the people who live there, but those living in the surrounding areas which Indian Creek support via their mutual aid agreement. Therefore, I urge you to vote yes on this proposal to put the ESD vote on the ballot. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Next is Craig Lampkin.
Thank you, Judge Brinkley. Commissioners, as you were well aware and have been told this morning, the creation of an ESD is basically to provide financial stability and sustainability. And as Dee just mentioned, as been a couple of speakers have already mentioned, Stable funding for public services and charities through donations alone is pretty much impractical. Funding an organization through donations alone not only requires a sufficient number of donors, but it also requires that those donors contribute regularly. In the first 10 months of 2020, fewer than 15% of our district property owners regularly donated to the Indian Creek Volunteer Fire Department. Those few of us that do regularly donate believe that all property owners in the district should contribute their fair share to support our emergency services. My fear is that the Indian Creek Volunteer Fire Department is currently unsustainable without a regular revenue stream. The creation of an ESD will provide that necessary consistent revenue. As Mr. Turner mentioned, I too do not like to think about increasing my taxes. However, while no one likes additional taxes, an ESD will not only ensure that every district property owner pays their fair share, will also ensure the district is provided the needed financial stability and sustainability that's essential for the operation and future growth of our vital emergency services. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak, and I strongly urge you to favorably consider placing the creation of the ESD on the ballot. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next up is Leslie Cooke. If I'm mispronouncing that, I'm completely sorry. It's the Cooke County Education, and
Thank you, Judge. I'm Leslie Cahoon. And I just wanted to let you know that I've been around in Cooke County and Lake Kiowa for 25 years. Have family up here as well. And I was on the board at the time when we started hearing the complaints about the old fire department and how we had lost confidence in the ability of that fire department and the chief. And I was certainly in support of the creation of the Indian Creek Volunteer Fire Department. I have a personal experience where my garage almost caught fire in the middle of the night. I didn't know it. A truck caught fire, pulled up right beside my garage, which is right by County 2 Road 211. And when the fireman got there, Mark Beachy, he said the fire was shooting 20 feet up into the air, 4 feet away from my garage. He was able to find in the middle of the night a garden hose, pull it down there, and keep my garage wetted and keep it safe. It saved us over $100,000 in tools and vehicles, etc. And then he came back the next morning because we still didn't know there was a fire out there, and wanted to check the structure in person and the daylight and on the inside and the outside. Offered to help us in anything that we needed to do. But other than losing the 3 trees, there was no damage. Back in 2012, we did what was necessary for our members, and that was to create a new fire department. And now we can see possibilities as we grow larger and larger at Lake Kiowa and also around Lake Kiowa. We see the possibilities of needed more and modern equipment. Indian Creek Volunteer Fire Department has identified those needs, and we want to do what's available, what's viable, and to do otherwise is certainly uncertain, it's scary and fragile. So I certainly support the Commissioner's Court going out for a vote of the people. Thank you.
thank you, sir. Next is Jim Adams.
Thank you, Judge. Thank you, Commissioners. I, like Sam, am on the Board of Directors at Lake Kiowa and represent the community on whole. And one of my jobs in that role is to act as a liaison to the Indian Creek Volunteer Fire Department. And with that, I attend their meetings and help facilitate communications between those two different teams. But in watching the Indian Creek Volunteer Fire Department meetings, it's just amazing how they have to cobble together volunteers to do things, to work on equipment, how they go seek, the donations that they acquire and just the things they do to keep the equipment working. And so an ESD will really help keep equipment working and really help to have a staff that can help keep the facilities moving forward in a proper way. I can also say that I know a number of the volunteers who serve as emergency service response people, and they're just tireless servants and work very hard, and I hope we can keep them in their role and not burned out. I know in 2015 that the Indian Creek Volunteer Fire Department did a number of things to improve the ratings of the volunteer fire department. And with that, they moved from like a rating of a 10 down to 4 and 8B, depending on where you were, where one is in the district. And what that did was allow insurance rates to go down for those residents. And it's believed that with an ESD, even though there will be a tax, we can see some, again, increase in ratings or improvement in ratings, which will allow insurance rates. So I too just urge that you allow this to go to the vote of the people, allow them to decide what's proper. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Next is Bob Smith.
I'd like permission to
Yeah, if you got some handouts.
Thank you.
I appreciate the opportunity to address the court today. I'm Bob Smith, born and raised in this county. I opened a business in this county 46 years ago and still operate it today. I'm not opposed to ESD, and I'm not for it. I do feel our department is important. Last month, there was 5 fire calls, 2 grass, 3 house, 31 medical calls, and 14 miscellaneous calls, total to 50, according to the Lake Kiowa communique. After analyzing the data from the communique, in my opinion, there is a need for an EMT station nearby Kiowa to answer. I'm a property owner inside and outside of Lake Kiowa in the district called number 21 that this petition is wanting to create. This petition wants to put a tax burden on property owners in Indian Creek District for 10%, 10 cents on every 100, when the Bridge and Road Tax Fund is only 14 cents in the county. In the communique, it's been stated that wants everybody to pay their fair share. According to the petition, the boundaries are not clear on the small pieces of paper that is provided on. There are people asking where the exact boundaries are. It needs to be clear what is taxed and what will be exempt. In all fairness, there's 63 square miles that the Indian Creek District covers. The Indian Creek is located inside of Kiowa. It needs to be outside of Kiowa to serve all the district properly. I would like to ask the Commissioners Court to not make a vote on this today, but to consider all opportunities of everyone. After the first of the year, there will be a new commissioner to replace John Clement. I suggest making a new hearing at that time. I would like to thank John Clement for the service you've given the county in your precinct 3. It's appreciated by the citizens of your precinct. In closing, God bless Texas, Cooke County, Indian Creek Fire Department, Lake Kiowa, and God bless America. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker is Danny Ingles.
Your Honor, Commissioners, I'm Dr. Denny Ingles, and my doctorate is in counseling. My license was in counseling until I retired. And I want to amplify some of the points that were made earlier, but I'd like to particularly address the issue, the very real issue of burnout. As I speak, our two chiefs are working on our 20-plus-year-old fire engine, which we just got back. We took it in for a repair that was going to be $1,400. While there, the valve issues resulted in over $5,000 for the repair. It's now back. As I said, the two chiefs had to make a choice of being here today or working on what looks now like a transmission issue. We just can't keep those kinds of issues at the forefront with these same people who are making, in the case of the two chiefs, over 100 calls per person each already. Our first responders all work full-time somewhere else, and each one has family responsibilities, either children or elderly parents, what have you. Many of them also work a second job simply to provide enough income for the family. Today, we just really are faced with key responders not being able to continue at the pace they're going. When we started this process about 2018, it's a long process trying to get from where we started to this point of asking for an election. When we started, we had 4 responders making the vast majority of all calls. Today, it's 3 of those responders. And they simply can't keep doing what they're doing the way they're doing it, and we can't keep making all of those. We're pushing 500 calls this year, 500 emergency calls, and we simply cannot continue. Right now, we're answering all those calls, but without some relief during peak call times when our volunteer firefighters, EMTs, and paramedics are employed elsewhere, we simply need some other means of addressing those calls, namely some paid part-time volunteers for those peak call times when our other people are not available. So we don't want to put the public at risk. We risk doing that without a better means of emergency response. As a board looking forward, I'm president of the board of the Indian Creek Volunteer Fire Department, and as a board looking forward, we see that our volunteers cannot sustain our outstanding record without some means of reliable, regular resources. We need dependable vehicles and equipment rather than used, maintenance-intensive equipment such as the 20-plus-year-old fire engine I just mentioned that continues to need far more than routine preventive maintenance, which takes volunteer time away from readiness and service. As personnel face increasing pressure from calls while also handling their employment and domestic responsibilities, it becomes a matter of time before we face burnout, with its attendant risks to personnel themselves, to other volunteers, and to the public. An emergency services department would answer these otherwise foreseeable barriers and obstacles. For the sake of our volunteers and the publics they serve, our ICVFD board asks you to let the public decide via a vote. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Next is Zach Cooper.
Zach's not here, he's on a fire.
Okay. So we'll move on to the next sheet, and I'm going to mispronounce this name just for warning. Norma, is it Desolé?
My name is Norma Desolitz, and I serve as the treasurer for the Indian Creek Fire Department. And when we get donation checks, we often get letters of thank you from the people that we have helped. And I have a couple that I've just recently received, and I'd like to share them with you. The first is from Ernest Kelly. He said, "Thank you again for coming to my rescue last November 26th after the tractor ran over me." Emergency call. And then from Carol and Rita Johnson. "Carol and I are very appreciative of your brave firefighters who have given their time to keep our neighborhood safe. 2 times in the past month or so, I have called upon you in a panic as grass fires started on either side of our property and were out of control and headed our way. Response time was excellent, and in record time, the firefighters had it under control. They were efficient and didn't leave until all trace of embers were gone. Thank you so much for being there when you were so much needed." And that's signed Carol and Rita Johnson. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Tabitha Polly.
Hello and good morning. My name is Tabitha Polly. I own a small brokerage, real estate brokerage just over in Aubrey, Texas. I am a mother of 3, I'm a grandma, and I'm also a ranch owner. I own a small ranch right off of 902, where I've raised my family for the last 18 years. Last year, when my neighbor and friend Steve Kitchen had come to me and told me about that the Indian Creek Fire Department had an opening for a board member, I suddenly felt passionate and compelled for a multitude of different reasons, a little bit different than the ones that you've heard today. My son, Jeffrey Polly, 4 years ago, August 12th, had come home from school from Tarleton and took a summer job. 3 miles from my driveway, an accident happened. A nerve was severed in his leg, and his life was lost. No doubt everybody from the neighboring volunteer fire departments did the best that they could. I'll forever be grateful for the first responders and the job that they did. I think most importantly that we all need to keep in mind is, like has been mentioned already, these guys are burnout. They're tired. Everybody is doing the very best that they possibly can. Ryan Adams lost his life at 23 on 902. Scott Ragsdale on West Line Road, again, 22 years old. This is just a few young people just in the last few years that has been directly towards our family that we know on a personal level. I do believe that this is something that is very real. I think it's something that that the entire county needs to know that we're growing. I mean, I'm seeing the real estate market it's exploding. People are moving north. It's wonderful. It's rural USA, rural Texas. Cooke County is wonderful. I just hope that everybody here just takes a minute and really just allows some consideration. It's a need for our whole community. Thank you.
Thank you. And next speaker is Ray Westbrook.
Good morning, Judge Brinkley and County Commissioners. I have a packet for each one of y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Again, my name is Ray Westbrook, and I do live in Cooke County. And I do live in or near the area that is being proposed as ESD number 1. I am at this point opposing the formation of ESD 1 in its current format. I am not in favor I am not in favor of a new taxing entity that would begin with the maximum allowable taxation as a base rate. The amount of money generated by this much taxation and generated revenue is way above any past expenses incurred. I am concerned that that station is within the bounds of Lake Kiowa, making it difficult for firefighters to exit Lake Kiowa proper for county calls. I am concerned that this station is within a gated community and yet would be taxing residents that have no access to the station because they are not allowed within the gates of Lake Kiowa. If this ESD is to come about, I recommend that the facility be located on a major road like 902 with easy direct ingress and egress. It would also be a property that has public access. Lake Kiowa, with 3 square miles only, constituted approximately 40% or 170 of the 430 calls that have occurred from 1/1 of 20 to 11/2 of 20, while the other 60% or 260 calls were from the remaining 57 square miles of the proposed district, showing the concentration of calls within the gated community. If Lake Kiowa were to incorporate, Lake Kiowa is able to fund their own fire department. Lake Kiowa, approximately 12/2 of 20, has a $539 million market value within Lake Kiowa. That would generate at your 10 cents per 100, $539,000 per year in Lake Kiowa alone for a single year at its current market value. By the definition of an ESD in ICVFD literature, ESDs are primarily created in rural areas to ensure reliable funding of local fire and other services. Lake Kiowa is not rural. The other 57 square miles in the district are rural. Lake Kiowa should incorporate and fund their own fire department as a town or a city, or move the facility to a public location. As Jason Brinkley mentioned when we first started this, there was a petition generated to this court to get us to this point. There were almost 400 signatures on that petition. 93% of the petition signatures were signed by Lake Kiowa residents. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. And that is the last public speaker that we had signed up. So if I can get back to my agenda, it is 10:38, and we are going to close that public hearing, which is item number 4. Item number 5 is deliberate, consider possible action regarding the creation of Emergency Services District to be known as Cooke County EM Emergency Services District Number 1, and that is the to potentially allow that to go to an election or not. When this was last on the agenda to set the date of this particular hearing, I know there was some concerns at that time regarding a few items. Lynn, you mind addressing some of those and kind of giving a little overview of what the actual recommendation or what the request is?
On my earring. Good morning, gentlemen. How are y'all today? I'm here on behalf of the Indian Creek Volunteer Fire Department, and you should have in front of you a copy of our PowerPoint presentation, as well as a copy of our due diligence record, as well as a copy of the new proposed boundaries. And that's part of the issue that we've got going on. But before we get into that, I'd like to kind of give you some background information with regards to the Indian Creek Volunteer Fire Department It was founded in 2012. It was previously known as Lake Kiowa Volunteer Fire Department. And just for clarification, although it's located inside Lake Kiowa at this particular point in time, it is not the Lake Kiowa Volunteer Fire Department. It is the Indian Creek Volunteer Fire Department, which means that it covers our district, which is inside as well as outside Lake Kiowa. It was incorporated as a 501c3 nonprofit, and it has been an all-volunteer for 8 years, as well as in the previous years. It's been volunteers. There are 19 firefighters, first responders. There are 9 firefighters. There's 1 firefighter/ECA. There are 9 firefighters who are EMT as well as EMTP. In 2018, there were 392 calls. In 2019, there were 440 calls, which is a 12% increase just over the previous year. In 2020, we're looking at a 484 projected calls, which would be an additional 10% increase in our calls. To give you a little bit more clarification on that, the Indian Creek Volunteer Fire Department, there were 34% of those calls were fire, 66% of them were EMTs. The peak call times that we see, according to our statistics, is anywhere from 8 o'clock through 1700. The busiest times of the week are Sundays and Wednesdays. I don't know why that accounts for that, but that's what we've found based on our data, is that it's Sundays and Wednesdays. Additionally, to all of the 911 calls that were dispatched, we have an annual response rate of 99.98%. That's a pretty significant amount of response to the 911 calls. Of course, we have concerns. You've heard a lot of our speakers tell you about the concerns that we've got. We are having difficulty with the high call volume during the daytime hours. The problem with that is that all of our firefighters have full-time jobs and family members and family responsibilities, which is impacting our ability to provide services for our communities within our district. That's creating this need for this ESD, and that's why we're here today, is for you to consider the possibility of allowing us to put it on the ballot. We need to determine a way to ensure coverage on our busiest days and times. And with all the above requirements, we will start missing emergency calls, which of course will result in the loss of property as well as the potential loss of lives. When this ESD petition process started 3 years ago, we had 4 firefighters handling the majority of all the calls. That number of highly active volunteers has now dropped to 3 firefighters. Another indication of the impending risk of burnout for these key responders and all Indian Creek volunteer members who all work full-time elsewhere and all have family responsibilities. So as we look at these concerns that we have a duty and an obligation to the people that we take care of to find out what is the solution. How are we going to be able to address these needs and concerns? Fortunately, the state of Texas has created an emergency service district, also known as the ESD. And I refer you to the Texas Health and Safety Code, Section 775. That's the code section that basically deals with ESDs. In 775-003, that's the authorization to create our Emergency Services District. It is a taxing authority, which is responsible for providing fire and rescue and emergency medical services to its residents. An ESD can impose anywhere from a 1 cent to 10 cent per $100 ad valorem tax upon its residents. That's up to $100 for each 100,000 of appraised value. This rate is determined by the ESD board, okay? The ESD will contract with the fire department to provide the services that we've mentioned above. It financially supports the fire departments for its services. If the ESD is not satisfied with the services, it can terminate the fire department and contract with another service provider. So if you look at what it's going to cost the taxpayers, Like I said, the ESD can impose an ad valorem tax ranging from up to 10 cents per $100. So if you look at, if you have an appraised value of $50,000, with a tax increase at 5 cents, that's $25. A tax increase at 10 cents is $50. For 100,000, 5 cents would be $50, 10 cents would be $100, and so on and so forth. It goes all the way up to 300,000, $150 at 5 cents, and $300 at 10 cents. So let's talk about who's actually going to run the ESD. It will be a board of 5 members who will be appointed by you, the Commissioners Court. The only requirement is that they be at least 18 years old, that they own taxable property within that district, they are a citizen of the state of Texas, and a registered voter within that ESD. Once you've appointed the board, then the board will elect its own president, vice president, treasurer, and board members. They will serve a specified time and are rotated every 2 years by Commissioners Court following this Chapter 775, okay? The board decides matters such as the tax rate, which fire department to contract with, how much budget help the fire department should receive with regards to personnel, equipment, property, facilities, etc. Those are the things that the ESD board would take into consideration when determining how to distribute the funds. Okay, so what are the residents going to receive as a result of the formation of an ESD? First of all, you're going to get faster response times during the day. Incipient fires will double in size every minute. 5 minutes is the magic window for an MI-CVA patient. Obviously, faster response times can help save lives as well as property. Part-time personnel. The hope is to hire off-duty firefighters, EMTs, who will have experience and the appropriate certification, and our volunteer firefighters and EMTs will continue to be the heart of our volunteer fire departments. Residents will also receive the potential of lower insurance rates based on the ISO criteria. We've been fortunate within our district to have reduced those, but with the creation of the ESD, we anticipate those insurance rates to drop even lower. The ISO, or the Insurance Services Office rating for most of Lake Howe and some other individuals who meet the criteria right now is a 4. For others in the district, it's an 8B. For ISO rating for other residents is a 10. The opportunity to improve the ISO rating exists for all district residents, and that will mean a significant amount of savings to those district residents. I think what's really important too is that they will receive a peace of mind. There will be additional quality fire and rescue and emergency services, experienced personnel who are experienced and capable help that will be available throughout the day. It'll be fair, and I think we all understand the need for fairness at this point. Everyone will pay their fair share. Currently, we depend upon 15% who support us with donations. We're positioning for the future. That's something that as good firefighters and the board of directors, you have to position yourself for the future. You can't just focus on what's taking place right now. So when we look to the future, what are our long-range goal plans? Well, first of all, we'd like 24/7 manning of the fire station. Additionally, we would like to eventually have living quarters at that fire station. And at the 10 to 15% growth, the call volume will obviously double in 5 to 7 years. We are the second highest Cooke County Volunteer Fire Department call volume. In 2019, we had 440 calls, 65% were medical. In 2018, 59% were medical. 2017, 67% were medical, and so on and so forth. You see on the chart we've given you. But you compare that to what were our contributions. In 2014 and 2015, we had 20% of our district residents contributing to the volunteer fire department. In 2015 and 16, we had 13% of our district residents contributing to the needs of our fire department. In 2018 and 19, 11% of our district residents were contributing. As you can see, over the years, there's been a steady decline in contributions for our fire department. Okay, let's talk about the boundary considerations. As you see, I've provided you with our due diligence form. We had numerous meetings amongst all the bordering volunteer fire departments between March of 2020 and November of 2020, which ultimately has resulted in the following points of consensus. The consensus was reached with the Valley View Volunteer Fire Department. Consensus was reached with the Callisburg Volunteer Fire Department. It was reached with the North Shore Volunteer Fire Department. And at this time, we're working with the Gainesville Fire Department and the City Council. They have already approved annexing part of their ETJ. But we're also talking to them about taking in a part of their actual fire district. And that's part of the reason why we are not able to actually present you with everything today. We did not have an opportunity to get the GPS points available to you, which we're required by law to provide you. And also, we need to wait until Gainesville has an opportunity to make the city commissioners meet to determine whether or not they are okay with us taking part of their fire district. When I spoke to the chief the other day, he obviously can't speak for the city council, but at this point, it doesn't seem like there's going to be any problem with that. But again, I can't speak for the city council. I think what's really interesting and something that we should all take note of is the fact that 2 of these volunteer fire departments that we've already consulted with expressed an interest in forming their own ESD or to being annexed into this ESD number 1. I think those people are seeing the value in having an ESD as well, because they too face the monetary financial problems that all small fire departments do. When you look at the cost considerations, equipment, as Dr. Ingles just told you, our chief and our assistant chief right now is at the station working on one of our engines because it needs the work. It's so old, we're having to patchwork everything together. When you look at the cost, an engine will cost $600,000. The support equipment that goes with that should be about $100,000. When you look at the cost for personnel, it's about $80,000 a year per person for part-time contract off-duty firefighters, EMTs, and paramedics. Property, $20,000 an acre. The facility, $250 to $300 square foot. 340 district residents who are registered voters signed the petition for ESD1. An election will allow those people to have their voice heard in determining whether or not we have an ESD. I want to go back and visit with you just briefly about the boundary situation. We've got this map here. I don't know if you guys can see it well enough, but this is the new proposed boundary after the direction from the Commissioner's Court to go back and talk to each one of our volunteer fire departments surrounding us. This is the map that we've come up with. They've all agreed to. And so what we will be doing is providing you with this map with the GPS points on it, so that way we can meet, we'll file an amended petition, so that way we can meet the requirements for the petition. But I want you to know that we did meet with each one of those volunteer fire departments. It was a very interesting and fruitful conversation with them. It took some work, it took some time, but we're all on board. We have them signed off on all of the maps that affect their district. Both they signed off as well as our chief signed off on it. And so they're good with what we've come up with. It took a concerted effort and a lot of giving in some instances in order to come up with this map. But we feel like this is the map that will probably service our district and our residents as much as possible. The other thing too is, a couple of the people talked about how they would like for the fire department to be outside, the facility to be outside Lake Kiowa. We're not necessarily opposed to that. At this particular time, it is located inside Lake Kiowa, but we ingress and egress not through the front gate, but through the back. That's how we get in and out of our fire department. And we respond as quickly as we possibly can, not only to within Lake Kiowa, but also to the other members of the district outside of Lake Kiowa. Barbara, can you think of anything else we might? Okay?
Well, I have one point, Lynn. We do not own a building. We lease
Right.
a garage, essentially, that happens to be located where it is. But we do not own a facility.
And that, it is not annexed in to Lake Howard.
Right, it's not annexed into Lake Kiowa.
It was last refurbished 40 years ago.
Yeah, and there was a lease, at least when I first started representing the fire department, that required us to pay Lake Kiowa, but also to do all the maintenance on that building as well, which is unusual on a lease agreement for a commercial piece of property. But we've maintained it to the best of our ability, and since, I think, renegotiated that lease. Do you gentlemen have any questions about what we've presented to you, or any concerns that we can address for you?
Just out of curiosity, Lynn, on your due diligence statement, you indicate you didn't have a resolution at that point in time with North Shore. Is that still correct?
Correct.
Okay. Your presentation today says that it's in place, but your due diligence says that it isn't.
Okay, we've just not updated that yet.
So you do have.
Oh, yeah, there it is.
You have, I think that was at an earlier meeting, you have had agreements with everybody surround, I mean, all the other fire departments, volunteer fire departments that touch.
November 23rd.
Are you on your due diligence?
November 23rd, they scroll all the way down.
If it's there, it's there. I was
Yeah,
just curious.
it basically says on November 23rd.
We met with Chief Tackett and Assistant Chief Shane Tackett and Mrs. Tackett and Chad Johnston.
And I was present for, I think, all the meetings. And like I said, we had everybody sign off on it, so that way we're all on the same page. We've reached this consensus. And I apologize for us not being able to get to you the completed map. I got to tell you, the appraisal district has been wonderful helping us and working with us. And now when I call, they kind of cringe and go, "Now what, Lynn?" But they have been really, really good. I got this latest to them, and they're overwhelmed right now, so they have not had an opportunity to provide us with the new GPS points on it. Also, with regards to Gainesville Fire Department, the City Commission does not meet until the 15th of December. And so they will have to vote on whether or not to accept our proposed boundary as well.
We can provide them.
Yeah, and we can, if you want the smaller copies.
And I think that was emailed out to us before the meeting, and I think
Yes.
that was provided
Yes, it will.
to the commissioners when I received that.
That's what I was about to say, the map that we got this morning doesn't match this map.
You gotta look at the red line.
The red line, it should be.
That's the problem that we have, especially with our little maps. They're very detailed, but they can be difficult to read. And so that's why we did this overview for you.
And I think that's one of the biggest concerns that I have is we need to make sure everybody's aware of what is the final map before we make a final decision.
Absolutely.
Because I think there's some questions on what property is and isn't. And I appreciate the hard work y'all have done over the past month or so in trying to reach consensus on everything on it. But I know that I attended at least one of those chiefs meetings, and I know that it was everybody did a great job of keeping the end goal in mind, and that is providing an essential service to our residents. And I appreciate all y'all's hard work on that. I think a couple of the issues or a couple of things that would need to be clarified that I can see before we would is mutual aid. If we allow this, if this happens, if all the ifs become reality, would there would need to still be that same mutual aid that Indian Creek currently has in place.
That is correct.
And that's with the Cooke County contract.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, what about the Cooke County contract?
The mutual aid he's speaking of, it's all the volunteer fire departments have to sign that contract with Cooke County through Ray Fletcher. And so we have done that.
We have those yearly contracts that are,
And I'm aware of those.
But should we do this, do we anticipate continuing to make, what is the $11,500 donation?
I think it's maybe a little higher than that after you talk in run volume. But
radio.
that was my second question, is right now the county funds each fire department a set amount plus, then I think it's so much per based on run volume.
And don't we, what was it, insurance, workers' comp?
I think there's a little bit of workers' comp for, I just don't want to get into a double dipping situation where we're taxing people at both the county level and the proposed ESD level.
Sure. We cover their liability insurance and
That's
stuff
exactly
through
on.
Lewis.
So there would need to be some determination on that, because I can't speak for the rest of the court, but I have some heartburn about having a double taxation situation.
Absolutely. And I think that if the ESD passes, that's certainly something that the board and the Commissioners Court will sit down and discuss with regards to that. We don't anticipate any kind of double dipping.
I know we have workers' comp. Is there something else we have?
No, ma'am.
So
it's just, I think it's just workers'
You don't
comp.
have a liability insurance for the EMTs, paramedics that we oversee, have some part of?
it's just the workers' comp for.
Workman's comp is all it is.
Yeah, that's the only thing that I'm aware of. And then like you said, the financial assistance per department right now that they receive from the county. Those are the two biggest. I know there was a question, and I had Brandy Carr do some last-minute work on a last-minute thing, so I'm going to give Brandy and her team a shout-out for working very hard in a very tough time to come up with this number. But of the total registered voters in the proposed boundary, which I believe is that one, if that's based on, are very, very, very close to that. So there is total 4,504 registered voters in that proposed area. The number that is in Lake Kiowa, or in that, which is voting precinct 22, is 2,067. And the number that is outside of Lake Kiowa is 2,437. So there's actually about 54% are actually outside of Lake Kiowa versus 46% that's in, which is a pretty close split on the district.
And if I may, I think part of the problem that we have is the average person doesn't understand about fire districts because it says Indian Creek Volunteer Fire Department, but it's located within Lake Kiowa. A lot of people think, oh, that's Lake Kiowa's fire department, when in fact it's not. And so that's something else that we need to work on, is to educate the people outside Lake Kiowa that this is their fire department as well. And that's what we intend to do when we go forward with our public meetings as well. Barbara?
One thing we found out when I was going around getting names for the petition is they come from municipalities, like we raised our family in Plano. That's part of the line item for Plano budget, is paying for the fire department. And they think that it's automatically, somehow, the fire department's getting paid by somebody that's already worked into their tax, when in reality it's not. So you have to kind of explain this when you move out to the rural area, that it's not that way.
Chief Cooper called me this morning and told me they were going back on a rekindle of a structure fire from last night, and he passed along that he is for the ESD, but he was concerned with the confusion of the maps. I guess we had our maps mixed up in the public hearing and stuff.
I think that the maps that were originally presented are the ones that had to go in the public notices, and since then, as tasked by Commissioners Court, there's been some changes to that map. So I think that's one of the things we need to make sure before we make a final decision, is that everybody is aware of exactly what map is being discussed.
He said it scared a few people thinking that something wasn't on the right page, but he said it was just the timing of the maps and everything, and that was his only concern.
It was, and
Yeah.
Brian and I got to confirm via email and text and saying, unfortunately, but it is the one that they have signed off on. That is the correct.
Yeah. And he had reached out to me and said he was comfortable with those boundaries. He had signed up in advance to speak today, but he got called out on a fire, so he wanted to relay his message to me. Yeah, big one, probably the biggest one in a while.
And I think that's some of the biggest problem that we've had. When we filed our petition, we had to provide you with a map and the GPS points after that, and that's on record at this point. And that's what the newspaper's printing because we haven't given you anything else. But after our meetings, this will be the proposed map for you to consider. So we're not asking you to take any action right now. Just give us an opportunity to present you with the agreed upon map.
Are you going to have to do a new hearing because the map wasn't put in the paper correctly? Because how do you have a hearing and tell the public you're going to discuss something? So do you have to redo the hearing?
So the proposed district boundaries as presented in the petition were the boundaries that were put in the newspaper. Now, since then, there has been some boundary changes that have come along. That is one of the things that's determined at the Commissioners Court level is what is the actual boundaries. Now, from a clarification to the public, it might be a good practice to rerun that as here is the new agreed upon map so that everybody is clear what exactly we're talking about, and that could eliminate confusion. So procedurally, I don't think so, but as a good practice, I think we should.
If you're going to have a hearing on something, you ought to at least tell the people what the hearing is, the boundaries, voters who might be involved and not involved, the line has changed. I'm not trying to be a sticky wicket, but I would never vote for it if I didn't have the hearing over the right map. I don't know if I'll vote for it anyway, but I haven't decided that part yet because I've got a bunch of. Anybody else have any other questions?
Oh, lead off.
Huh?
Go ahead and lead off. I might have something.
So, okay. Thanks for coming. I appreciate all the input. So if you've done this much work, how much value, taxable value, do you think will be in that area?
I wish I had an answer for you on that, but the appraisal district has not given me that valuation yet.
Mr. Smith, we've presented this, we've sent him all these maps, but he's real busy right now, and he couldn't get them to us by today.
And we were required to have.
539,000 out of Lake Howe alone.
539 million.
A million.
Well,
No.
that's the market value, yeah.
Oh, okay.
And it also depends, when you appoint the commissioners for the ESD, it's up to them, it's not up to us, whether they do 1 cent or all the way up to 10 cents or how.
You misunderstood my question. How much taxable value will be there? Not what the tax rate's going to be, how much taxable value?
Right.
For the potential for the how much.
Right. I will have those figures for you, so that way you have an accurate figure to look on. I can't tell you at this point.
Which leads to all these other questions I have, just going through it. How much taxable value are you going to have? Okay. What will your tax rate be? What are you trying to generate? Are you going to have 4 full-time firemen? And here it says they earn $80,000 a year. That's $320,000 just by itself, not counting insurance, all that other stuff. You're up close to $400,000 before you replaced a how many $100,000 truck. You still don't have a building. The point I'm getting to is, are you going to max out at 10 cents right away? Can you make it cash flow, I guess would be the proper word. And another thing that came up, another fire department told me, well, my fire department, I call it mine, the Munster Fire Department, said they worked it all out and they had some meetings, it ran out of time. And one of the things y'all were working on was an agreement that no one would try to encroach on anyone else. In other words, I think there's a fear out there that once you set this up, you're going to try to annex your next door neighbors. Well, I know everybody's shaking their head, but I think they want an agreement to that end, that everybody would sign and present to us is the way it was presented to me. But there wasn't enough time to get it all done because your meeting was today. And I thought that was a good idea. I never thought of that. It wasn't my idea. I think that would allay some fears. I know, like any other fire district, if you wanted to have one, you could have one. I mean, if you wanted to form one, you'd have the right to form your own. You just don't want to be taken in by somebody else. I understand. That's some of the questions. You got anything, Gary?
I have probably more concerns than I do questions.
Well, there's concerns. I wanted to ask about, okay, the yearly stipend, all of that. You've answered that question. I don't think we could do that. No, I don't think we could continue. What else? Management cost, does anybody think of that? I remember, well, totally unrelated to this, but a new board was formed to govern schools one year, and it wasn't going to cost any money. And I was Munster's appointee to that county school board, and the first thing we did was hire a secretary and rent an office. It lasted 1 year. Those kind of things I never forget. We grow a bureaucracy for good intentions. I'm not against you fighting your fires. I know everybody struggles with the money. I'm not trying to be a stumbling block. But when if it happens, they're going to come up here and talk to us about it. I know this. I've been around tax rates long enough to know this. If the county tried to go up 1 penny, the phone calls would get large. If we tried to go up 2 pennies, the phone calls would become unbearable and the letters would be in the paper. If we tried to go up a nickel, I don't know what would happen. So I take this stuff very seriously. I mean, it's easy to talk about. We got to have the money. We need this. It's just going to be a nickel or 10 cents. That's a lot of money. And before I could ever vote on that, I really would. What do you think your budget's going to be? How many people do you think you're going to have? How are you going to handle the management? Since we're going to be involved appointing the board, who's going to do your audit? What's an audit going to cost? Are we still going to audit them? Is the auditor still going to audit their audit like we do now? There's a whole basket full of stuff that's just business.
As far as auditors are concerned, depending upon the size of the ESD, you can waive to have an audit done, or you can have an auditor. But as far as the budget and, what are we going to spend, that will be up to the ESD. We can't dictate that. We can't say they're going to raise X number of dollars and they're going to spend it all on this. That's what that board is for, to make those determinations, who gets what money and for what, and how much money do we have. We would come to the fire department or the ESD and we would say, this is what we'd like to have. And then the ESD board would then make the determination, is just like you guys do when the departments come for budget. You make that decision. You say, yes, you can have this much money.
But you have to have some idea up front what that would even be. I don't want to tell voters I'm behind something, please here, go vote on this, without them understanding what they're committing themselves to.
Sure.
There's a lot of folks out there. If you don't think $50 or $100 or $200 is a lot more to pay in taxes, go to a tax hearing in Austin, Texas. I've heard them say, well, it's just a few dollars a year, and the taxpayers, the homeowners, come unglued. $50 isn't anything to you. Well, it's a lot to me. And I'm not talking about me personally. I'm talking about the public. So everybody might think it's great. I don't know. But I want the financials nailed down before I'll ever commit to anything. Go ahead, Gary. I'm sorry if I stole your thunder.
You didn't steal my thunder. As a segue off that, what I would say, my concern is once this election happens and the ESD is created, we can talk about the commissioners appointing board members and stuff of that nature, but that board, as I understand it, will be able to take the full 10 cents per 100 from day one until, forever, basically. So I don't think that we're ever going to get a real number, because a board could do 2 cents or they could do 10 cents, so we have to assume the worst.
Sure.
And I've never seen anybody, for the most part, go down on taxes once they get all their expectations met. Now, having said that, probably my number one concern is the taxpayers in Precinct 1. I think that Box 7 is the only voting box that's in that district, and it's going to be a minimal number of people. And where probably many folks in Lake Kiowa can afford this, I see that it would put a significant burden on those folks in Precinct 1. So, as per, you guys have mentioned burnout, finances, can't keep volunteers. Every volunteer fire department in Cooke County it can come here and state the same concerns. So if I do this across Cooke County, I have to assume that every volunteer fire department we have is on the verge of crater. And I don't believe that. So my concern would be how are they maintaining volunteers and keeping up the enthusiasm? I've done reserve law enforcement for 20 years. You do it because you want to, you do it because you have a passion for it, you do it because you want to support your community. So, and it's real demotivating when you got one or two people that's getting paid to be there, dictating to the old boy that's left his house and family and job to come help out. So anyway, having said that, I appreciate you guys' efforts, I do, but it's a very aggressive and progressive approach as far as I'm concerned. What I'm hearing is immediately, oh, we want a new facility. We got to have a new facility. We want new equipment. Used isn't good enough. We want a full-time staff. That sounds great. You know, people out there paying taxes want lots of things, but they pace themselves. So some of it has to do with the management philosophy. I know in Precinct 1, it took 14 years before we got a facility because we saved up our money. Now, I could have went out and hit the taxpayer for that, but as an elected official, what's going to happen to me? They're going to vote me off the island because they don't want me to be quiet so quick in accomplishing these things. Now, as for equipment, a lot of this equipment's older, but because it doesn't get utilized every day, hours on it is limited, miles on it's limited. We got 30-year-old motor graders that we run every day. Now, are they running into life-threatening situations? They have when they're out there blading fire breaks. We need them to run, okay? People don't care if it's shiny, as long as it can blade a road. Well, fire equipment is important. I don't care if it shines, as long as it can respond in a timely fashion and it can adequately function. Don't care if it's a 2020 or a 2002 model, as long as it works. So just a little bit different philosophies in management. Now then you talk about starting off with 4 people. Having worked management now for about 40 years, 4 people in a 24-hour, 7 operation doesn't work. You have to have about 20 or 21 people to make that happen. Until that happens, we can talk about risk of life and property, but until that happens, literally until you can put a fireman and an ambulance in front of every house, somebody's at risk. And we talked to the one slide where it says faster response times. I believe it, that's great inside Lake Kiowa. If 5 minutes is crucial, you can't get outside the gates of Lake Kiowa in 5 minutes. So those other people, I think, 57 miles of area, they're not going to get a whole lot of benefit as far as faster response times. So we talk about a new facility. Well, do you need housing in a new facility if you don't have it staffed? And if you really staff it to those 21 people, that's 7 people a shift. I mean, you put 1 or 2 people on a shift, they can drive a vehicle out there, but they can't fight fire. It takes a sure enough staff. They can't be there 24/7. So I see a significant amount of time that's not truly covered, and a whole bunch of money spent toward it. So if you don't have staff, you don't need housing. And if you don't have staff, you don't need equipment, because equipment won't run itself. So I see where logistically it's going to benefit Lake Kiowa hugely. Response times, things of that nature. I don't know that you're going to improve on the services outside of Lake Kiowa proper. You're going to get more people there, probably the same amount of time. So based on your numbers about fires and 5 minutes being magic windows in health situations, I don't know what it's going to buy the people outside of Lake Kiowa necessarily. I'm sorry? 19 minutes. 19, yeah. And I mean, I'm going to be in it in all honesty, full disclosure. I'm going to be the farthest point away from Lake Kiowa, you know. But that's neither here nor there. My concern is I can afford it. Several folks inside Precinct 1 and within other portions of the district. I mean, what's the median income in Cooke County? It's not the median income in Lake Kiowa. So, I mean, it would really be nice if you guys could consider maybe the incorporation, have your fire department, police department, and road and bridge effort, and just, you might eliminate part of your fees and incorporate it into taxes. But based on what I know right now and the philosophy I've heard, and I see no reason for this philosophy not to transition to any board that this body would appoint, is far different than my management philosophy. So I'm one person, but based on what I know today, I will tell you openly, I will campaign against it. So
I appreciate your concerns, Commissioner. However, I think that you took some of the things that I was saying kind of out of context. We don't expect immediately to get a new building. We don't expect immediately to buy all new equipment. We don't expect to be, 24/7 manned. These are long-term goals. They're not something that we're looking at doing right now, today. And we will have to prioritize those things. What do we need to do first? But I will say this, that if we don't have the funding, then our citizens, whether they're in Lake Kiowa or outside Lake Kiowa, will not have any kind of fire department or any kind of EMT service available to them unless it comes from another district, because our volunteer fire department will have to fold, because we cannot continue to sustain what we're doing, especially with the increase in calls at the rate that we are. Our contributions that come in are, as I showed you, we're getting less and less every year, and I anticipate it to be even worse this next year because of everything that's been going on. Everybody's going to be impacted by that, and I don't want our citizens to be without those necessary services that we need.
But the flip side to that is, I understand the COVID, everything, the pandemic, I agree with you. Money is tight. What are they going to do when they get a tax bill? And it went up $100. It's the same thing. We could argue this in a circle forever, but I really, truly do want to leave you all with the importance. You tell me that, we're going to, the board's going to decide what the budget's going to be, and we're going to contract or make the deal with the board will decide what the tax rate's going to be. You all have an idea what it's going to be. If you don't, then you shouldn't be up here asking for this. If y'all are going to tell me you don't know what you think you're going to spend the first year or two, you should not be here with this. Y'all know. You have to know. You got some idea. I know you can't put it down to the penny. Seriously, it kind of goes along with what Commissioner Hollowell says as far as the management and the amount of money and what the taxpayers can pay. Somebody has to come up with something. And one other question, and I've heard Ray said this before, and is Ray here?
behind the pole.
Wait a minute. Come here, Ray, please. Come on up to the podium. I'm not going to pick on you, but no, this ISO rating always gets thrown out there, and it sounds great. Can somebody, insurance man, put a value, a real value on that? Because it's awful easy just to say all these things.
Some insurance companies honor that or reflect that in your rates, some don't. Most, as far as I understand it, do. It has some bearing on that.
But what is it? Can you quantify it?
I can't tell you the percentage by insurance company.
I can. I'm insured with USAA, and our home insurance dropped $450 a year when we went from a 10 to a 4. A person outside Kiowa who was living in an 8B designated area said her insurance went down to $300.
So why did you go from a 10 to a 4?
The Insurance Services Organization rating, the ISO rating.
I know, but what made it go down?
Oh, the fact that we established a fire department and we have the proper amount of hydration, you gotta have water.
Within the bounds of Kiowa though, correct?
Well, and the 8B extends to parts of the district that are outside Kiowa.
and you have a 5-mile radius, there's a formula for the ISO.
So you get, it goes within a certain mile radius, but the fact that it's in Kiowa does benefit, your point's gonna be it benefits Kiowa more? Okay, I got you.
The departments are rated by the ISO, it's a department-generated rating, so they contact the state fire marshal's office through the Texas Department of Insurance. They send the person out, they first send them a questionnaire about your dispatch, communications, training, staffing, fire prevention, equipment capabilities. That all then generates a rating. Then that rating is applied to all structures within 5 road miles of the fire station. Anybody outside that 5 miles automatically goes up to that higher 8 rating. The other factor in all of those ratings to get the full benefit of a 4 rating is water availability. And so if you're within 5 road miles of the station and they have adequate water supply, then you get that lowest rating. If you're outside of that rating, then it goes up to in this case, the high was 4 8 feet, so you get the 8 feet.
So, don't anybody take this the wrong way. So the more money you spend in one given 5-mile circle, better equipment, better whatever, more water availability, there's more to be gained in that circle, less to be gained outside.
True, and some of that could be by your water district, could definitely impact that hydrants or availability or water departments. Putting another station out would give you another 5 miles.
Another 5-mile radius. Now,
One of the key factors that has helped the ISO rating with Indian Creek is Woodbine Water has been very diligent in putting hydrants in places that the rest of the rural county probably doesn't have.
they're spreading the water around the county, okay. But we don't know which insurance companies honor that. See, that's
about all of them are, we'll look at ISO rating for a rural fire department, for rural
Most probably.
rates.
I don't know that, but I know some do not. I've had people tell me they didn't do it. That's anecdotal, I don't know that.
You know, if there were some way we could consider this and put a 2 or 3 cent max on it, that might be a different deal. But I have real reservations whenever a fire department wants to put on 10 cents. That's 1/4 of the county's whole tax rate, people. Our whole, what is we, 43 something? You know, for the whole county. That includes road and bridge. And we want 10 cents? Tell me we not got some aggressive goals. And we could say and Leon, to your point, I don't think they do know
What
their budget's gonna be. Because
well-
the folks in this room are not gonna set it, you know, they're gonna give it to this board that we supposedly appoint, and this board is, then the fire department's gonna go to the board and ask for X amount of money, and if this board says 10 cents is okay, that's what you're gonna get.
Seriously, y'all, I know y'all don't like me making these little stories, but really, that happened. The school thing, the state came up with a state, every county had to have a county school board a few years ago. Well, 20 years ago. And I was the lucky person from Munster. And we said, we don't want to hire anybody. The first thing we did, it existed 1 year. There's still records on that thing that are preserved somewhere. The first thing this countywide of very conservative people did was got an office, place to store the paperwork, and hired a secretary. What in the? So I know everybody means well, but I also know human nature when it comes to if they think they've got a pool of money, and that worries me. Somebody has to come up with a budget for this. I can't write a 10-cent. I feel like I'm helping write a 10-cent blank check. And I know how serious the taxes are, good Lord, school, everything else, county. That's why I said, if we went up anything remotely like that, my phone would never quit. I'd have to leave it at home.
Can I jump in here?
Sure.
So we've been bouncing around and I've been writing some notes, so I'm gonna be scattered out, but I'm gonna hit some facts and not just based on opinion, but, you know, until 4 weeks ago, I was with Indian Creek Fire Department, so I'm familiar with everything. I'm familiar with all the work we went through for the ISO. That's why I can speak to some of those things. And I know how exhausting fundraising is when you leave your family 30 times a month and then you have to spend the extra free time to raise funds for your fire department. So I feel like all fire departments in the state of Texas are headed to this eventually. Will I see it in my lifetime? Probably not. Will we see it around here in our lifetimes? Probably not. But one thing that I will attest to that I have been hearing is from the naysayers is the 10% people think that's extreme to go for the throat right away. You know, I've been with the opinion that I would let it go to the vote and let the voters decide. But then you come up with there's always, and I've watched it, there's always the struggle of inside the gate versus outside the gate. And it's always, well, Kiowa this and Kiowa that, or outside the gate this or outside the gate that, but it's half and half. The population was stated a while ago. It's basically 2,000 in and 2,000 out. There's going to be if this does go to a vote, there's going to be a campaign for this thing. There's going to be a campaign against this thing, you know, and people are going to get educated at that point. You know, you talk about, you think the way that it's presented, you're talking about the department is failing, that you have to assume that other departments are failing. That's not the case. The department's not failing. It can rock along a while. It's just hard. The high call volume is going to warranty this, and the call volume goes up every month or every year. Valley View Fire Department and Indian Creek are the two highest calls, and it's a bunch. You know, and that's what I think Valley View would love to. They struggle with fundraising in a bad way. Basically, you know, they don't have as many fire members either to do the fundraising. So, you know, it's tough. I made some more notes here. You know, and I do agree to Leon's point. I think that, you know, I feel like this is moving towards the table today due to the mapping issues and all that anyways. I think some more things can be brought to us to make this an easier decision with budgeting and everything. But I'll start rambling here in a minute. Bear with me.
That's fine.
Everybody's making good points, but you know, at the end of the day, I feel like it's, you know, can be left up to the voters in that area. But it's the inside and the out. Okay, the facts that I wanted to bring up. So the response time we can respond to Woodbine out of our station faster than we can respond to just about every single location in Lake Kiowa gates. The response times outside the gate are faster than the inside Lake Kiowa to a T. We respond where the fire station is based on the west side of Lake Kiowa, but it is not inside Lake Kiowa property. It's just happens to be in that location. And if we're responding to the north side of Lake Kiowa or the east side of Lake Kiowa, we go out the gate and come down 902 and access the other two gates on the east side. So the response times outside the district are better, or outside Lake Kiowa are better than they are inside of Lake Kiowa, which I know that doesn't make sense to anybody, but they exit the station on County Road 224, 219, and highway speeds can be reached at that point. So that, you know, that's a fact. It's not they can get to Kiowa faster. That's not a fact. In fact, we can't even access some of the bridging in Kiowa from the west side. We have to go around it with heavy trucks and access it from the east side. So, you know, that's just one fact through all this.
But you don't mean to suggest that you can respond to Tabernacle Road 178 in the time it takes you to get into Lake Kiowa, or get to a call in Lake Kiowa?
It depends. Well, I mean, that's a stretch, but
Well, I
it's
mean,
pretty
that's
close.
what
Well, I'll tell you what, if you're on the northeast side of Kiowa, I can be on Radio Hill Road faster than we can be inside Kiowa.
realize.
Yeah, no, and I'm not arguing with you. I'm just saying we can come out on County Road 219, and that's the best road in my precinct, and you're moving going north. If you're going south, you've got 902 and all the farm to market roads to travel. So it's a misconception that it presents inside the gates with a better response time of where the station is. But it's been a dream. Let me finish this one sentence, I'll let you talk. It's been a wish of the department ever since we started it to have a station someplace else, just the funds haven't been there. So which would help bring the community and lessen the Kiowa versus the outside world.
One quick example, you're having a board meeting, both chiefs were there, we got a call. 2 minutes later, they were outside at the 902 administrative first day. Someone had collapsed.
You know, and it's, you know, I get excited when I talk, and I'm not upset or anything, but, you know, there are some facts to this and some misconceptions that it's hard to educate on people on things. You know, a part of the hardest thing to do with anything, any task or any goal is to educate people. And, you know, there's a lot more to it that people just don't understand. And I understand, Ray, I understand where you live. I sympathize with the issues that you see with it, but, you know, it's, as a whole.
Ray's not even in it.
Oh, you're gonna be outside the line?
I don't know.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, and forgive me, I don't know. Yeah, and forgive me for not knowing exactly where it falls. And I
just use that as an example because that's what probably somewhere close to
The guy
the
across the
northwest
street
corner
got
of your.
the call, and it was 19 minutes. They got the call at 20 hours ago. We got there at 20:24. Took them 24 minutes to respond to my name.
was it a medical
We're
call?
on the other side of the street.
Medical
Couldn't
call
be
or
quicker for me.
medical call or fire call?
Medical.
I think in your place, you're in a bad spot because you're a long way from Calsburg and.
Well, in the rural county, I expect poor service.
100%, yeah.
Poor internet, poor phone service, you know, that's why we're gonna have a phone anymore.
And I've had to,
Expected that when I was.
and I mentioned to it in the first talking that we had on this topic, that I've had to distance myself from the extreme details due to me being on the department. And I didn't resign from the department due to this ESD. I resigned from this department due to multiple personal reasons that I'm not going to discuss on this court. But, you know, I do have a knowledge of how the fire departments work, and I understand that, you know, maybe it's hard for everybody to see, but, you know, I think they're going to it. I think Valley View is chomping at the bit to do the same thing, and they're glad that Indian Creek's done the legwork for them. So,
So you
know,
know,
and
it's
I've
not
heard
speaking for Valley View, are you?
That was straight out of Zach's mouth this morning. He said that, you know, they hope that if this works, that one day they will follow, and I don't think he'll mind me doing a direct quote. Yeah, and it's been a process, you know, and it's still a little more legwork to do. And like Commissioner Hollowell said and Leon both said, the legwork that y'all done is outstanding. It's just, you know, it's still coming together.
Just to point out your example of how we go in and out of Iowa, rarely, correct me if I'm wrong, but rarely do the fire trucks go through the front gate. They go out that back gate by that water district.
Oh.
And even Dee, who spoke, he lives on the east side, way on the east side by the east gate. They go out that back gate, around and through the east gate.
100%. The only way that we would never go through Kiowa and exit the front gate for a call. The only way that the fire trucks are gonna leave the fire station and go down Kiowa Drive is if they're going north or they're coming to a house fire at the front gate like where I live. That'd be the only place that.
And the Comanche gate, they all have remotes now to get in and out of that, with their vehicles. So they can get to that north, go back.
The Kiowa roads are so windy that you can't traverse them with fire apparatus in a safe manner.
When I first came on the board a couple of years ago, they were wanting, the firefighters going, oh, we want to build a fire station, you know, even at the northeast, because we realized that people are way out there. And we're over here kind of on the west. So we do need something. And they were saying, even if it's just a Mueller warehouse building with a vehicle there that would get there quicker. And that's our goal. It's something simple like that. I mean, when we went to visit these other fire stations, I was kind of shocked. They all own their property, they own their fire station, and some of them are just a Mueller building out there that they have put all the equipment in. I'm like, wow, I would like something like that.
I was explaining that to them the other day, how it all crumbled and how it's a whole long story why the fire department doesn't own a building and stuff, and it doesn't have anything to do with mismanagement. It's, you know, it's.
Oh, but it's not from the current administration.
Exactly.
But let's be clear. And if I communicated anyway, I think the departments are failing. That's not my intent. That's not
And
what I
I
intend to
and I
communicate.
didn't mean to say that, I mean, but
Okay, that's not what I said, but, I mean, and we couldn't get by without them. But I suggest every one of them is struggling, and every one of them is putting forth a huge effort to keep their numbers up. So I see every one of you being challenged. And it's not that I'm against the ESD. I'm against an ESD without some type of parameters so that the people, I want to hold the taxes down as much as possible.
Sure.
On everybody, because some folks just simply cannot afford it.
And that is my fear too, and that's what's been brought to me, is they fear the going for the throat for the 10%, or the 10 cents.
And I wish that I could say, this is what we're going to do. But Chapter 775 gives the board that right, that discretion to determine how much tax they want to impose. And I can't encroach on that authority.
Absolutely. I don't think you can answer Leon's question.
But I can give you.
No, but it has to be, the question has to be made.
No, the point has to be made.
The point has to be made, the question has to be asked. I find it hard to believe that there's not a group of folks out there aren't already planning, oh, we're going to pick the board. You want to know how that'll work? Y'all will make recommendations to us who you want. It'd be just like the board down there at Lake Ray Roberts. That group of people gets together and they tell us who they think they need. Well, okay, I'm not going to pick. Who am I going to pick? You all are going to approach us with who you want on the board. I'm not going to go out looking for somebody to be on the board. Judge, who do we normally get to
It's always difficult to find anybody to serve on a board, especially a board that's probably volunteer and going to catch
Exactly.
going to catch some flack. The Ray Roberts board, which you're referring to, is a volunteer board, and to go subject yourself to something like, I mean, we get paid, but to subject yourself to something like this and not get paid, and same thing with school boards, they have my admiration, and that's always a difficult process to find somebody that is willing to subject yourself to those type of discussions.
One clarification, either Judge or Ms. Switzer, you said earlier that we appoint the initial board, I'm aware of that, but then after that, it's an election process.
No,
correct?
it's only,
continuation.
it's only on, there's about 3 carve-outs for counties of certain sizes that it's an election.
Okay.
And that's a little confusing, that it's only for those certain size counties, and we don't fall in
Okay,
that. So
I'd heard it both ways.
this would be a commissioners court appointed board going forward if all the ifs become reality. I don't think it specifies one way or the other.
being on the board?
I just want to know if they're going to pay them too, part of their budget.
One of my concerns is typically what happens is there'll be a bond election, and people will go vote for it, particularly those that are enthusiastic. Use a school example. If you got a school, you got a child in school, you're usually really enthusiastic about them having the greatest facilities. Right after that bond passes, people get their tax statements and they call me and say, Gary, why in the world did my taxes go up? I said, well, that bond election took place and it passed. Oh, well, what bond election? I sure as heck didn't vote for it, and so I absolutely believe if this goes to election, Lake Kiowa, residents of Lake Kiowa will dictate the outcome. And if that's the way it falls, it's the way it falls. Unless it is extremely well communicated and you get people motivated to go to polls, and I don't see people voting a 10-cent tax on themselves. And we have to let them assume if we communicate correctly, unless this body can put some limitation on it, we have to communicate worst-case scenario.
And our due diligence doesn't stop now. I mean, we intend to set up public meetings to educate the people, the persons that would be within our proposed district, because we want to make sure they have as much information available to them so that they can make an educated decision when they go to the polls.
And I appreciate it, I do, but I know that's typically not the way it works out, but you can only do so much.
Yeah, I mean, we set up public meeting. I can't force anybody to come to it, but it's there, it's available for them to learn what's taking place. Commissioner Clement, I can get you those valuations
Well, we're gonna-
as soon as we get the
You're
GPS.
gonna, to inform the public, to be successful, I don't want to be coaching you, I'm not, but in my mind, this isn't coming over to my side of the world yet, but I would never vote for something that, where they told me, well, it's only going to cost you a few cents, and nobody can tell me the potential of what it's going to cost me. I served on a school board for 18 years, and the tax appraisal board for 5. So I've been around the taxes all my life. And people, if they think they're getting something like the school, like Gary's right, a new bond for the school for their kids, they support it. They get upset when they get the bill. And they really do. And groups of people want nice things. They got the ability to tax themselves to do it. But in this job, they like their roads. They want them fixed nice. They want the buildings nice. They want good service. When they go to the clerk's office, they want somebody taking care of them. They sure don't want to pay any more than they absolutely have to. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's the way it's supposed to be. And that's the way this will be. That's why it's important to know all those monetary questions, the answers to them.
So I've kind of, John, if you got anything.
I was going to ask, y'all, is this the plan to totally eliminate the volunteer firefighters?
No.
You're going to work side by side?
Absolutely. The volunteers will always be at the heart of our Indian Creek Volunteer Fire Department. We need to be able to supplement their assistance, though. Because like I said, we have 3 guys that are responding to the majority of the calls. And they have outside jobs, too. Matter of fact, one of them has 2 outside jobs. And so we don't want to do away with the volunteers. And again, there's plenty of people out there who have the heart for it, that want to do it, but because they have other commitments, they cannot commit full-time to this volunteer position. Perhaps if we have someone to supplement their volunteerism, that will encourage them. You know, if I have to volunteer for something knowing it's going to be 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, and I have a family and I have another job, it's going to be hard pressed for me to do that, no matter how much I love the process or whatever it is. If I can say, as a volunteer, you know, we anticipate the most that you'll have to do is, you know, half of that or a quarter of it, whatever it is, then that would make me more likely to actually volunteer, because I have to balance these considerations when I'm doing my volunteerism, and we certainly do not want to do away with them at all. We just want to give them some assistance, and we want to protect the people within our district so that they will have the fire and the medical response times that they need. That's just the kind of the way I look at it. And we've talked about this, the board has talked about this, about the volunteers. They are the heart and soul of our fire department, and they will remain that way.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, Gainesville no longer has a volunteer fire department. Is that true?
That's correct.
I don't think they do.
I
Correct.
recall roughly 30 years ago when I moved to Gainesville used to have a volunteer fire department. I also knew people that was volunteers, and I also recall the disagreement between the full-time and the volunteers. And it seemed like there was a lot of animosity amongst the 2 groups. I don't know if this will work with the combination of full-time, or actually you're calling them part-time, with the volunteer firefighter. That's a concern I would have.
And I understand that, and I think that would be up to the individual volunteer fire departments, their chiefs, to communicate with all of the volunteers and any paid employee to balance that and to address any of those concerns. It's just like anything else with management. You know, you've got to be aware of any issues that are arising and address those issues in the best way that you can. We can't solve all the problems. We don't have all the answers. And yes, this is like being a parent for the first time. You do the best you can and you learn as you go along the way. And there'll be times when you don't make the right choice. but you learn from that and you move forward.
Something else, y'all were able to come up with long-term goals. I think short-term, first thing on the list should also be listed. You know, you've named off the equipment, the personnel and everything, but out the gate, if this were to pass, what is it would be the striving point? First off, you got to get a board, I understand. Right now, y'all are working as a board that's trying to get this passed through. So I would think y'all would have everything that's been asked amongst everyone here.
And we appreciate the feedback that we're getting from you, because these concerns that you have, our voters are going to have, and we need to be able to address those issues with them to the best of our ability. It's like you say, it's part of that education process. So if we can delineate our short-term goals a whole lot better, and then our long-term goals, and be able to see the difference in those, then yeah, that's definitely something we can work on and do to present to the public when we get to that point.
And the other concern I've got is the changing of the boundary. The people that live outside the current boundary today, before this gets put on a ballot, that they get notified that they are changing boundaries. Because if it's up for election, they may not understand that they've got to vote.
And that's, yeah.
And they may think they're in Ballyview's or Callisburg's district. I know I'd be upset if something passed that I thought I wasn't part of.
And that's why, going back to, do we publish the new boundaries? Absolutely. Absolutely.
You know, some of those folks in Lake Kiowa that's on fixed incomes, it's going to impact them hugely, because even though they may think their taxes are frozen, once you create a new taxing entity, the only thing frozen is your appraised value. So it's not going to be some of those folks that's going, may have the thought process of not going to affect me. Absolutely going to affect your elderly in Lake Kiowa, particularly those on fixed incomes.
Well, and that's another decision that the ESD board can make. Are we going to give them a homestead or tax exemption,
Not for Lake Kiowa, not give it to the rest of the country. See, that's how you get that us-them stuff started.
Well,
yeah, you'd have to be, you couldn't legally give it to half of your, based on geography.
I'm smiling behind this mask, Lynn, I really am.
Yeah, I understand. And that's why I hate masks. I can't see faces.
I understand.
But Lake Kiowa, the demographics of Lake Kiowa is changing as well, because we're having a whole lot of younger families move in there, and they don't have a whole lot of income. And unfortunately, our older population is lessening as the years go by. So,
What next?
So I guess in summation, I was letting everybody voice their concerns, to go back to the root of what we are to consider, and I guess this is the final homework assignment for the group, is the Commissioners Court has to, in order to grant the petition that allows for the election, we have to find that the district is feasible and will promote the public safety, welfare, health, and convenience of the persons residing in the proposed district. That's also when we fix boundaries.
If you read on, though, does it not say sustainability?
No. That's the only criteria. It does say that you have to grant the petition, or that if that happens, you got to fix the boundaries and impose negotiated positions, or no negotiated conditions. So is it feasible, and will it promote the public safety, welfare, health, and convenience of the persons residing in the proposed district? And I think to a couple of the points made here earlier, more financial information would be substantially needed to determine what exactly is feasible and what is not feasible.
I sure thought somewhere in that statute it talked about sustainability.
Not that unless I'm missing something. It's not in this section that when you determine.
So I was looking for the criteria as to, did we have to, why we had to, and.
Those are the two criteria points, but I don't remember seeing anything about sustainability.
We can review that later. So
And I may have missed it.
I'm gonna suggest to you, it's probably there.
It's not. It's not as worded.
Yeah, okay.
And it could be somewhere else, but I'm just telling you that is in the section that it says for the approval. So anything you can have that, or present that would help us make that finding or not make that finding, would be needed. I'm going to wait until you get back to me on a final map, and then we'll put it back out and have another meeting on it. We'll probably go ahead and repost that so everybody's clear, because I think that's one of the big questions is where are the actual boundaries that are being proposed, and then we can move forward from there unless anybody's got anything else.
One point, 2 points. One is that when and if we have a regular source of income, whatever it might be, we know the worst case. At least then you can project costs over the years to where you say, this is a reliable amount of income. Consequently, we can borrow against that to build another fire station, to build a fire station, to build a remote location or location. We really know that these volunteer fire departments can go under. Not that long ago, we lost one, Oak Ridge. If this one went under, we got some huge issues, and as a board, that's the reason we're here. We're looking down the line. We can't go say we need to get these kinds of equipment, this kind of facility, and we need a line of credit. Well, but we're not sure what we're going to have or how often it'll be coming in, that sort of thing. So those are the factors that, as we look down, I mean, it's foreseeable that we can't keep doing this the way we're doing it, and that's the reason we're here. We want to keep people safe.
Or if nobody's got anything else, then item number 5 will be no action. We'll bring that back once we get that information.
It'll be after December the 15th.
Okay.
Was there a discussion between the other fire departments about I don't know what you'd call it, an agreement between all the fire departments that this is what the boundaries would be? No one would try to annex another one?
Correct.
Say what?
I don't know that there was any specific discussions with regards to encroachment.
They signed off on the line.
They signed off on the lines, but I was told that there was some talk amongst the fire departments, everybody, in the meeting you had about coming up with an agreement. You have an established ESD that would try to take over the next fire district.
No, we're not trying to do
Now, I never said you were. I was told there was talk of an agreement between the fire departments that wouldn't happen. I'm not saying you're trying to do that.
One of the things, though, Commissioner Clement, is if we were to want to annex a specific area, then the voters within that district would have the right to say yes or no. That's the checks and balance with regards to that.
It's another election that would have to be held.
Absolutely.
Like Valley View and Calsburg have expressed an interest, whether they do it on their own or whether they say, hey, ESD number 1, can we join you? It has to be a mutual agreement between that fire department and the ESD. It has nothing to do with Indian Creek at that time. It has to do with that, the fire department and ESD. And so it's up to those two parties. Now, if they want to go, but we're not out soliciting, if that's what you mean.
Barbara, I think if any other fire department that wants to become part of this ESD or part of a separate ESD, I believe is obligated to go through the whole process.
It's the process again.
Yeah.
So item number 5 will be no action. Item number 6 is deliberate and consider possible action regarding changes to volunteer fire department district boundaries. I added this onto this agenda because I know that conversation is happening, and I didn't know if we'd have anything before for this court. I know there's some other departments that are that were spurred on by this process that may be presenting agreed upon boundary changes in the near future, but I'm not aware of any. I have not seen any prior to this meeting that's been finalized. And item number 7 is to adjourn. Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
We have a motion by Commissioner John Clement, second by Commissioner Snuggs. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you all.